Okay, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming. So this is our third in our series of lectures. We try and do one, once a month. We're also going to do movies in here once a month. So there'll be some. Let's see. The next one is Great Gatsby, which is coming, and then starting in May, we're going to start doing the Cars movies. So Cars 2, Cars 3. We thought that that's probably when the kids are starting to get out of school. They might want to come see a movie. So we'll be doing that. How's everybody liking the hoods up? Is that something you guys are enjoying? Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. So we took your recommendations. We got several people that were quite interested in seeing inside the engine compartments. And what we came up with was, as you guys know, we'll be rotating the galleries every 4 months. So once that gallery is getting ready to be rotated out, which is what we're doing in the Great American Classics, that Gallery A, we'll be rotating those to an Art Deco. So what we thought was that particular gallery that's going to be leaving, we'll get the hoods up so you guys can come and see the engines in those. And then we'll pick a few additional ones that we own, that are Savoy collection cars, and put up some of those hoods so you can kind of see some of those also. So, at the end of this weekend, we'll be pulling all the ones out of Gallery A, and we'll be doing Art Deco. So make sure you come back on Tuesday. The Gallery A is exquisite, but I just saw the cars that landed here last night, and they're incredible. So wait till you see what we got on a lineup coming in. It's really great. Okay, so I won't take up any more time. I'll just say one more thing, is that Stephen Murphy, who I'll introduce here in a second, he'll kind of go through a little presentation about himself and where he works, and the cars that he curates, and he'll focus on the 5 cars that, again, the Richard Driehaus Collection. We really appreciate those guys loaning us the cars that we could have in the Great American Classics Gallery, but they also loaned us 5 more exquisite cars that are coming in on the Art Deco. And since you're here, he's actually going to give you a little preview with some pictures of what those cars are going to look like. So again, I'd like to welcome Stephen. Stephen is the curator for the Richard Driehaus Collection that's up in Chicago. And I'll let Stephen go ahead and go on with his presentation. Again, once he gets done, then we'll do questions. We'll have 2 microphones, so feel free to raise your hand, and we'll pass out some microphones to you guys. And if you would, sometimes it's good if you'll repeat the question at the end, so that people know what the question was. Okay, well, thanks very much.
Thank you, Bruce. I feel very welcome, by the way. I've been here a couple days now, and when we dropped off the cars that are coming out of the Great American Gallery 4 months ago, it was a bit of a whirlwind tour. I was here for less than 24 hours. Spent a couple of nights down by the airport in Atlanta. So this time around, I'm doing it right. I'm, enjoying you guys' southern hospitality. Yeah, thank you. This is a great museum. You guys have maybe been here before. I was here very briefly. I hadn't seen it open yet, and I'm glad to see that it's just ticking. It's really working out, and I'm very pleased about that. Welcome to you guys too. It's a nice crowd we got here, well, like Bruce said, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the collection, my employer. A little bit about myself, but mainly about the cars. Mainly about the cars that are leaving on Monday. And I'll introduce, like Bruce said again, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the incoming cars, because I have a feeling that I'll be back in 4 months, and I can give you more detailed commentary on those. So, without any further ado, let me start my wonderful slideshow. And I'll tell you a little bit about Richard Driehaus, which is the founder of the collection. Blake, we have a problem. Richard Driehaus, he's a South Chicago guy, true and true. He grew up poor, but he was always very entrepreneurial. He was, the people ask me, well, when did he start collecting cars? Well, you got to go back to when he started collecting. He did paper rounds in the morning, and with that money, he started collecting coins. Well, he was a very sharp kid, and he figured that really the fun was in trading coins and selling them for more than he bought them for. So that's where his collecting and his business initiative started. So anyway, fast forward a bunch of years, he went to a Chicago University, DePaul, where he got his BA and then his MBA. And he did very well in the stock market. He was a very good stock picker, money manager, and he set up his own business in the early 80s. And well, the rest is history. He cultivated his collecting. There we go. He cultivated his collecting. He graduated to French posters and paintings. He is probably the largest private Tiffany stained glass collector. So both lamps and window panels. So he's got a very clear idea of what he likes when he looks at it. He's very classically minded. He's into classical architecture too. And he's a patron of the arts, so he puts his money where his mouth is when he supports a cause, and he supports a lot of the causes. Restorers of artwork, of cars, architecture. So he will really support those causes with his money and with his actions. He was very busy right until the end. We lost him, unfortunately, just over a year ago, but his legacy lives on, and that's why I'm here. Okay, we fast forwarded to me. Okay, so my job is, I started out as a restorer. He hired me in May 2007 as a restorer, and then I kind of graduated to sort of, running things, running the PR, taking the cars to shows, and that kind of thing. We have a small staff of restorers, mechanics, body and paint technicians that help us maintain and improve the cars. The cars are, they're nice when we buy them, give or take. So just wear and tear. Just bringing cars to museums, as much as we like it, it puts wear and tear on cars. So there's always a certain element of sort of upkeep, to take care of. I used to help Richard find cars to add to the collection. It's yet to be seen whether we continue to buy cars. The collection is in the hands of it's under the ownership of a trust. So there's a board of trustees that I'll work with to make decisions about the future of the collection. But we do know that the collection is going to come to museums such as this. And in fact, we have 5 cars here, 5 incoming cars, and then we've got 1 car. Our Tucker is at the Auburn Court Duesenberg Automobile Museum in Auburn, Indiana, and we have a Studebaker at the Studebaker National Museum in South Bend, Indiana. So that's kind of, those are our marching orders. We'll lend cars to museums. Anybody got a museum that need a couple cars? All right. All right, so talking about the cars themselves. So when I started working for Richard, there were 35 cars in the collection. We've added, 37 since. And the oldest car is a 1903 Curve Dash Olds. I was talking to a lady a minute ago about the noises that different engines make. That's your single cylinder car. It's got a very distinctive sound to it. And on the right is the newest car, which to some of you might look like a Chrysler Concorde, like the one I had in the early 2000s. Well, that's what that car started out as. But it's kind of a long story. There was Exide, it was a battery manufacturer that decided they were going to make an electric car with their batteries in it. Well, they didn't quite make it. And this is an unfinished, unnamed, undriven car that we had the opportunity to buy, and Richard thought, now with electrics and hybrids and stuff, this is a good sort of footnote to automotive history, which is what we're about. The collection tries to highlight the best of American automotive design and engineering. And I think you'll agree that all of these cars fit squarely in there. So, some of the, and I'll come back to this. This is just a quick primer on the cars. Some of the important cars, Pierce Arrow Silver Arrow sitting in front of you. This was the car that was shown at the Century of Progress World's Fair in Chicago in 33 and 34. So Richard, he was a true and true Chicago guy. He really wanted this car. So that's why it's here. I'll talk more about it later. We could have a next slide. Okay, another good example of a truly remarkable car is this one-off Mercury made out of fiberglass from '54. And you see, it's we're kind of, moving through the ages here. This is, smack dab in the middle of the jet age. And if you see this car, from the other views, it just consolidates that idea that the designers were really thinking about jet airplanes, and spaceships and stuff. And a lot of the styling cues made it onto these dream cars, these idea cars that they were coming up with. What more do we have? Okay, this one is a car. It started out as a 41 Lincoln Continental, a stock car, a regular production car, a coupe. And Raymond Loewy, who was a very well-known industrial designer, he designed cars, but he designed a bunch of other stuff like cash registers, the paint scheme for JFK's Air Force One, a bunch of stuff that, the consumer goods, basically. He was the father of, taking something and breathing new life into it, making it prettier and doubling the sales, for example. That was his personal car that he took and thought he could improve it. The 41 Lincoln Continental was a good design by all standards, but he was pretty sure of himself type of guy, and he thought, I can do better. So this is the result. And I have a feeling that you're going to get this car here because Bruce was swooning over it this morning. So something tells me you'll end up with this car here for a few months. All right, the mission of the collection. And that is, word for word, the mission of the collection as it stands now. So it's to maintain, safeguard, and lend the collection, the automobile collection of Richard H. Driehaus. I'm losing my thingy here, I think. So we are in all sorts of shows and museums throughout the country. For the time being, though I'm working on expanding our area of influence and possibly sending cars abroad to Europe, most notably. We have a large library that we are actively expanding. We use it. I mean, it's, library includes things like service manuals and just specs, torque specs, this, that, clearances, because all of these cars actually operate. We can drive these cars. You need to have that information handy to be able to continue to operate them, right? We haven't been hosting tours lately because of, we all know why, but I think we're kind of ready to start doing that again, but that's part of what we do. We're not, I should clarify that we're a private collection, so we're not open to the public, but we do give tours by appointment, okay? So a lot of the car clubs, we've given tours to architectural clubs, to design societies, that kind of thing, because I think you'll agree a lot of the cars are, interesting from a design perspective too. And we have traditionally taken on interns to, show them how we restore, how we maintain these cars, how we keep them pretty and running, okay? So, what have we been up to recently? Well, the highlight of last year was entering Pebble Beach Concours d'Elegance, which is, I'd say, probably the most important, the most prestigious classic car show in the world. It was our first time there. We entered this historic Miller race car, Miller Automobile, and we got 2 awards, which is not bad for a first-timer, right? Next, what are we going to talk about next? Okay, so moving on to and we'll do a round of questions at the end, okay? So moving on to the cars that are here, the first one I'd like to talk about is this lovely piece, which we bought at auction. It had been, well, it was ordered new by one of the research higher-ups in Eli Lilly Corporation, pharmaceuticals, and he enjoyed it when new, and it ended up in a big and prestigious collection where we bought it from when it came to auction. So you will see that actually some of the cars that are here now could almost fit into the Art Deco exhibition that they're about to open next week. This is a really it's simple, it's beautiful in its simplicity, right? I think in some of if you get a chance to look at it out there, if you haven't already, look at the pulls, the door pulls, the dash. It's got kind of really sober and elegant detailing in it. A great car. We actually we took it to a show out on near Philly, and even though it was restored close to 40 years ago by a renowned family of restorers in Indiana, it was such a good restoration and it aged so well that it actually won Best of Show at Radnor Hunt is the name of the show. So it's we think it was a great buy. We're getting a lot of mileage out of it and people are enjoying it a lot. Okay, moving on. We also talked about this unrestored car with somebody here just a minute ago. This car was actually sold new in Chicago, about 3 miles from the collection. South Michigan Avenue is where all the dealerships used to be. And in fact, one of the main retail outlets for what Detroit was producing, although actually Indiana was pretty big in automobile production. But Chicago was one of the first big sales outlets. A lot of the cars were sold to customers in Chicago on South Michigan Avenue. So that's the case with this one. A gentleman from downstate Illinois ordered this Stutz at the Chicago showroom. He owned a couple other Stutzes. And so, it was a local car that had ended up on the West Coast. The gentleman, quite a colorful character, he would, sometimes he'd take the train into downtown Chicago where his business was. Sometimes he would drive, or he was driven by a chauffeur. Occasionally on the way back to his home in Kankakee is the name of the town, downstate. He would race the train. The road back to his town and the train from Chicago to Kankakee ran parallel in long stretches, and he would race the engineers that he knew, from riding the train occasionally. So, or so the story goes. I mean, a lot of these stories, you can take them with a pinch of salt, but that makes sense. He was a pretty remarkable guy. You've noticed, probably, if you've seen it out there, you've noticed that it's unrestored. And it wasn't the first unrestored car that we purchased for the collection, but it's certainly to this day the most important, in my opinion. It's so, and if we could have the next slide, please. It is, it's just an amazing car, I think, because you've got all the original materials still there. The textiles, we're talking about horsehair stuffing. There is horsehair stuffing in there, and you can actually see it. So it's really a document. It's a testament to the materials and the workmanship that were employed in producing the car. And so for this type of car, we don't restore them because, in our view, the value in it is in the materials, in the original material. So we don't restore so much as conserve. And conserving involves taking away anything extra, dirt, grime, accretions they're called, taking that away and preserving the original materials so that they may last longer. Okay? So in restoration, you take away integral paint and upholstery, and then you replace it. In conservation, you take away the dirt and the grime, and you protect the original materials. Okay? And so one of the things, I bought this car at auction a few years ago, and this auction took place in Arizona. And I saw this car top down in the Arizona sun, and one of the things that sold me on it was that warm, see that warm tones in the dash? That under the Arizona sun is just amazing. And I think there's another picture. If we could, there we go. That is leather. The door panels are made out of leather, and the glow that I saw coming off that material in the Arizona sun is, I mean, I can still remember it. I was just blown away. And the car makes a lot of sense for a lot of other reasons. Price being one of them. We thought we got a decent price on it. But yeah, that's one of our unrestored cars right there. Yeah, question? The rusted floorboard. What do we do about it? Can we go back one? Is that? Okay, yeah, so that is actually, okay, we're seeing wood. It's like particle board, early particle board that's not really staying together. And I think there is some metal there, yeah. So there's, well, the conservators would give you a better explanation, but for active metal corrosion, there's a product, it's a type of acid, it's a mild acid that you apply it over the rust and it neutralizes it, it stops the rust. So it looks like it's rusty, but it isn't actively rusting, okay? And trying to think of the name of the acid, but tannic acid, yep. And then for the wood, they usually use it's usually like gel, they look like gels, but they're reversible, so that for the wood, for the fibers that are coming off the wood, they'll typically lay the gel on and let it dry. And like I say, everything that the conservators do needs to be reversible, okay? So you could come along later and take it off if there's a better way to treat it, a better way to fix it, or to stabilize it, yeah. I'm learning about it, and I think it's fascinating. Yeah. All right, so moving on. The Egyptian god Ra is the hood ornament for the studs. And so he was the god of sun, the god of daylight, the king of gods, okay? And Egyptian motifs were very popular during the Art Deco era. And this is a good example of that ending up on a car. All right, slide please, okay. Something completely different, right? So this hot number here is one of the first American front-wheel drive cars. So most people who know a little bit about cars or American cars will think of Cord when it comes to front-wheel drive American cars. Well, there was a competitor to Ford. They didn't really put up a lot of competition. I think they made about 80 cars, but this is the other American front-wheel drive car. It's both Cord and Ruxton were very low, and the reason is because of the construction. When you don't have a long drive shaft going from the engine, from the motive power to the rear axle, it means that the floor of your passenger compartment can sit lower. Okay, so you end up with a lower car, and those stripes, that paint job, that's period correct. There was he was an interior designer. I think he might have been an architect too, Joseph Urban. I believe he was Hungarian. He was tasked with, sprucing up the design, the paint finishes, and he came up with this stripy paint job. They also, they painted them in other gradations, so reds to yellows, for example, and there's purples, I believe. So this is the less colorful of the examples of the design. This is a sedan. This is a standard sedan. The Roadsters, the Ruxton Roadsters are really, if you see one out there, they just look like hot rods right out the box. Channeled, lowered, So, but that's the stock car. That's how it came from the factory, okay? Yeah, look at it there. Those lights, those headlamps are actually accessory. A lot of Ruxtons ended up with them. A lot of Cords ended up with them too. And our incoming Cord, which you will see here in a little bit, has those, but they're accessories. They're not stock. Okay. Okay, so we come to the crown jewels. One of the crown jewels. There's several, and this talking about, again, it's a concept car. So it was concept cars are generally a way for the manufacturers to come up with a design, put it out in front of the car buying public and the press, and see what the reaction is. We think we want to go. We think next year's models need to look like this, but let's just make one or two, send it out throughout the country or the world nowadays, and see what people think about them. Get feedback. Shall we put it in production? Shall we not? So, this is one of those cars. Okay, they made 5 of them. 3 remain to this day. One is in Florida and one is in San Francisco. Richard was very interested in this car. I was with him when he bought it at auction. He was very interested in this car for all the reasons that his collection is important. It's American, it has interesting design, or Novell design, and it's got interesting technology. It's got a V12 under the hood. So, and it has a Chicago connection. It was at the Century of Progress exhibition in 33 and 34. So, and Richard was he was very proud of the fact that he was from Chicago, and he did well there. So, and he's a Chicago booster, and like I said, he really gets behind a lot of good causes in the city. So, bringing this car home, I think, was part of that spirit, to give back to the city. Well, it kind of speaks for itself, I think. And I have a slide that will. This is a historic picture from when it was just built. Actually, when this car was built, Pierce Arrow and Studebaker were merged. So Pierce Arrow was under financial duress, like a lot of the luxury manufacturers were during the Great Depression, and they were struggling to stay in business. They merged with Studebaker, and they figured that they needed to come up with something, a silver bullet to pull them out of, possible bankruptcy. So they decided to come up with a spectacular car, which was actually built in South Bend, in the headquarters of Studebaker, where Studebaker was based. So it is a Pierce Arrow, but it wasn't built in Buffalo, where Pierce Arrow was based. It was built in South Bend, Indiana. And then this is evidence of the car being at the Century of Progress exhibition. You'll see the House of Tomorrow. There was a section of the fair that showcased the homes of tomorrow, and this they named the House of Tomorrow. And right next to the bottom left corner of the picture, you'll see the car tomorrow. I guess they figured it was parked right outside. So it's kind of neat to see that. So this was a slide that I prepared to show you. They did actually put this car in production, in a way. Okay, and you'll see we're playing a game of spot the differences here, and I think I always enjoyed that game as a kid, and I still play it when I go to shows and stuff. And so you'll see how, and this is usually how it happens when the concept car is put in production. The production car is never identical to the concept. There's always sacrifices they make for the sake of being able to produce the car in large numbers and at a profit. Okay, so you'll see that the most striking difference to me is the fenders. Okay, on the concept car you got pontoon fenders that run almost the whole side of the car, right? And on the production car you got the at the time customary fenders that you look at it and it's a fender that you can take off the car. You can unbolt it. It's a separate piece. On the concept car, it was much more streamlined, which really is the theme of this car, streamlined a good performance, move through the air without much wind resistance. Okay, so clean surfaces, and the car itself is more of a single mass, okay, as opposed to in what was customary for the time, which was that you had a hood, you had passenger compartment, and you had a trunk. So you had three different masses, whereas this tends to, make it a single unitary mass. Okay, so I had a little discussion here with somebody about where the spares went. You see that, let me give you a little bit of background there. Roads were really bad back in the day. Tire technology was bad. They had inner tubes that, punctured easily. And so the green car, the production car, had two what we call side-mounted spares, okay, each side of the car. So we're seeing one, there's one on the other side. Where did they put the spares here? Anybody want to guess? What's that? In the trunk? No. Right there behind the front tires. What? You mean? You mean here? Yeah. So, all in the name of streamlining and making everything envelope construction, right? There's just one surface as opposed to a bunch of things sticking out of the car and trapping air and slowing down the car as it's moving through space. Ooh, I didn't mean to do that. There is one on the other side, yeah, but I can't open it for you. Take my word for it, there is. Okay, so other differences, I put them on the slide there. You got your production car has a flat windshield as opposed to a V. This was a struggle before. Let's see if we get lucky today. Okay. Thank you. So, there's another good slide. Blake, if you could, or whoever's handling the... Okay, this is the most sinister rear window. Well, not the most, but it's way up there. And I have stood behind this car and stared at it with people, and there's all sorts of like robot head images there, Android head, Well, that back, it's the rear glass is useless. You can't see anything out of it. But isn't it amazing to look at? I mean, look at those. We have a really good photographer. We have a good studio at the collection back in Chicago, and he took these pictures, and I thought just that kind of, highlights how this little design detail here just gives it even more interest. I'll twirl the car so everybody can see that back look. I'm just borrowing this. It's not mine. Isn't that cool? All right, let's get the next slide. Okay, so this is pretty much going to be the last, I think it's the last car. Is that the fifth car? The last car coming out tomorrow. And this is a very special car in that in the pantheon of American manufacturers, Auburn, Cord, and Duesenberg were owned under the same umbrella company, okay? And Auburn was the runt. Auburn was the cheapest of the three. And this car, it's pretty much hand-built, whereas the sedans and the convertible coupes were more production cars. These were pretty much hand-built. I mean, we've had this car for just over a year, and every time I look, inside of it, in not the obvious spots, I see signs that it was pretty much hand-built. Somebody took a hammer and a grinder and a welder and made things fit. Okay, so it was kind of like a halo car for Auburn. They were trying to bring up sales because everybody was struggling to sell cars. So they were trying to come up with a halo car that would make people excited about buying the sedan, okay? And so the gimmick was that these cars, they came with plaque on the dash that said that this car has driven at 101 miles an hour. Actually, we're going to see a piece of film here in a little bit about that. But so, yeah, and this is it. So that was, they were trying to create excitement, just like concept cars also try to create excitement about possibly new designs. With the Boattail Speedster, they were kind of whipping up enthusiasm about their cars. So they had a important endurance driver at the time, Ab Jenkins, actually tested out on the salt flats in Bonneville. Of course, this is one of the early production cars. Not every car got put through that. And so the car is most likely able to go 101 miles an hour. We would never go that fast with it. Although this particular car is, it has actually done the Colorado Grand. And my friend Ken Gross here can attest to that. It actually attempted it 1 year. They had engine problems. They came back the next year and finally were able to do it 1,000 miles in about 5 days, which for an antique car is quite a feat. Okay, so that is it. It's also streamlined, as you can see here. It's pretty much built for speed, right? It looks fast, just sitting there. And they proved that it could be done. In fact, Abe here is saying that he was planning on driving it for 10,000? No, 10,000? Yeah, 10,000 miles. Anyway, he was trying to get the average over 100 miles an hour. Okay, and it is actually, I don't know if they showed it already. They have the AAA or the 3A, like he calls it, on the tape. They had the AAA taking time and making it official. So that I believe is the last of the outgoing cars. And how are we doing for time? And I'm going to talk about the incoming ones here for a little bit. Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, so 5 more cars. I'll quit boring you, and then I'll let you hit me up with questions. So coming on Tuesday, as tomorrow, the 5 cars in the building leave, and the 5 cars that I unloaded yesterday into storage will go into the gallery, and you all can come and enjoy them. So, in chronological order, we've got a 30 Cord, the other front-wheel drive American car, okay? And Cord, this was their first model. They had 2. The 812, which followed this, came out in 36, I want to say. So this is their earliest model. It's a cabriolet, which means that the top, it's a 2-seater and the top goes down, but it's got a rumble seat, which I heard today that you guys haven't had any rumble seat cars here, so we're going to open the rumble seats and show you guys what those look like. Very, very pretty car. That is a correct color combination, 2-tone blue. Yeah, it's pretty. And those lights, those Woodall headlights are on that too. Okay, I see people gasping. Is it really that pretty? All right, so the Brewster Ford. So Brewster, there's a story here. Brewster was the coach builder that Rolls-Royce actually bought to body their cars that they exported from England to the U.S. So if you ordered a Rolls-Royce in the late 20s, early 30s from the U.S., the chassis got shipped out of England to the East Coast, and it got bodied by Brewster in a variety of models. Now, everybody was having trouble with sales, so they ended up spinning Brewster off. Brewster decided that they were going to keep doing business. They were going to build their own cars. So they went out, they bought Ford V8s, they lengthened the chassis, and they basically put the body of well, there was 3 bodies to choose from. And the town car was really just like a P2, Phantom 2 Rolls-Royce. Shrunken a little bit, but the door handles are the same. You can see, the similarities between the Rolls equivalent and the Brewster. It was also there was also a bit of psychology there. If you were wealthy during the Depression and wanted to enjoy your wealth but not appear as ostentatious, you could drive a Ford Brewster, and it was a Ford after all. You know, you had that alibi. Okay, the next car is the 34 LaSalle, which this was a very important year for LaSalle. LaSalle set out to not imitate, but follow in the footsteps of Hispano Suiza, and the design. They started in 27, and it was Harley Earl's sort of foray, or the first important assignment, I think, for him was to head up design for LaSalle in 27. 7 years later, in 34, this was a completely new direction for them, completely restyled, and some of the things that I'll point out for you are those biplane bumpers with shocks, those two bullet-looking things. Those are actual shock absorbers. You've got all sorts of speed stripes and strakes and chevrons. The louvers, the porthole louvers on the side of the hood, it all screams streamlining and Art Deco. All right. 41 Graham Hollywood. This is the inheritor to the Cord 812 sedan. Actually, there's a Beverly sedan here in one of the galleries. So Cord kind of went south. They sold their molds, their presses, and Graham said, yeah, we can use that. Okay, so they came up with their own engineering. They made it a rear-wheel drive car as opposed to the original Cord 812 that the body is based on. And they went to the races with it. It didn't do them much good. All right, what next? Okay. Oh, that's a 41. There's a mistake there. It's a 41 Chrysler Thunderbolt, same year as the Graham. So this, another concept car, 5 made. Somehow the concept cars tend to be made in 5s, or they did. 5 made, 4 remaining. Richard's had this for a long time. It was one of his early important purchases. And again, it's a study in envelope design. It's a study in streamlining. This is actually a retractable top car. So behind the deck, under the deck, behind the seats, is a top that pivots and makes it a coupe, a nice little coupe. Okay, so that was Chrysler trying to, prove something. Of course, it's from 1941. Pearl Harbor happened late 41, and everybody turned to wartime production, making ships, tanks, planes. So it went nowhere, but there it is as a good also ran, right? Yeah, this is the side view with the top up. Okay. Is that? Okay. All right. So, it's Bruce. All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Stephen. Yes, that was me. I was doing that. Okay, so we're going to open it up for questions. So we have a microphone down here, and we have another microphone for people up in the upper rows. So I will let Stephen get a drink of water, so since he's been talking, and then I'll hand over the microphone.
Oh, true, yeah. Gurgling? You don't want to hear me gurgling? All right.
So, Stephen.
Yes, sir.
There are a lot of car museums across the country. What was the Driehaus Foundation's, how did you come to work with the Savoy?
Oh, I think it was Ken, I think, put me in touch with Bruce. Yeah, it's a small world and a very tight network of people doing good things for old cars and that part of history. So, yeah, it didn't take long for us to sort of align our goals. Yeah. Ken Gross, he's the culprit.
Yeah, Ken's right here, by the way. If you. Okay. Anybody else? Another question?
I don't know, but I can look for you. So we've entered rallies and tours occasionally, and it's great. It's a great way to further the hobby and see other people and other cars, but it tends to be pretty intensive for us. So we don't really keep an eye on mileages. This one shows 22,420 something. Yeah, but this car has been restored at least once, so there's no guarantee that those miles are accurate, that the mileage is accurate. Right? When somebody restores a car, usually the mileage gets reset or somehow changed. Yeah. More questions?
I was just going to ask, do you have the production model of that car?
Do we have the production model? Yes. The question is, do we have the production model of the car? Yeah. The green car that you saw, that is in the collection too. Yeah. So this is a V12. All the concept cars were 12s. The production cars came in V12 and straight 8. And our production car is a coupe. It's a straight 8. Yeah.
Well, I was curious about, I noticed right away that there was no rear view mirrors inside or out, and that was, if you're looking at a future car, I guess you look forward.
You
not
look forward.
backward.
Who cares what's behind you?
But I was curious about the trunk. Is it possible for that to be open?
The trunk? Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So the thing about this car is, like pretty much every other car in the 30s, pinched off at the, and I will spin it for you. We've got junk in the trunk, by the way. Pretty much every car in the 20s and 30s, it was narrower at the firewall than it was in the back seat. Okay, so you could fit 2 people up front and 3 in the back. There you go. With this car, it's the other way around. The front is wider, and it kind of tapers off as you move back, and that makes it so that you can fit 3 up front and 2 in the back seat, and there isn't even that much headroom in the rear seat. So it's kind of turning the dimensions and the proportions around for the era, anyway. It's actually quite a small trunk and a trunk opening for the size car it is, right?
Are you familiar with Joe Boards?
Yes, I am. We're buddies. Did you? Up in Lake, not Lake Forest, Morton. Okay, all right. He's living. I think he lives in. Yeah, he's in the northern suburbs now. Yeah, he's just about every important concept car from the 50s, particularly, has gone through his hands. Although he's into big pre-war classics like Duesenberg and Packard. You have? Well, good for you. Good for you. Yes, Joe's a good friend. He's actually helped us find and buy cars. So.
I was just wondering, the 72 cars you have, what is the range in years?
So the oldest car is 1903 curved dash olds, like the one in the lobby here. And the newest car is that 2000 concept car, Exide battery car. Yeah, so it was unfinished, unnamed, and unseen by the public. The whole point was to take it to car shows and lend it to journalists to go on joyride, so they would write it up and stuff. But it was when Bob Lutz was CEO of Exide Battery, and they just could. They were running low on cash, and they had to nix it. But the way I found that car was my previous employer. I worked in a small restoration shop, and my old employer called me, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago, and he said, "Hey, I have a client who has a car that might fit your collection." And it turns out that his client was a employee of a demolition company, and they had a job in Indiana at an old Exide plant. So it's common practice for demolition companies to walk through the property they're about to demolish with the client, and basically everything that's left at that point in the property belongs to the demolition company. So in the corner of a huge building, and of course this was a battery plant. They used to make lead acid batteries. In a corner of this huge building, under a tarp, is this thing, and that was the car. So rather than bury it in the rubble, they were like, "Yeah, we'll find a buyer for this." So that's how it ended up with us. What would be the value of this car in today's market? I don't know. I don't know. We would have to take it to market to find out, and it's not for sale. I'd rather not get into that, but they are selling. You can look it up. You can look it up. I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to let you do the work. But they sell for the last one that sold. I mean, there's 3 of them. They don't come to market very often. One sold after this in 2018, I want to say, about two and a quarter, 2.5 million. Yeah. Ken has a question. There is a story about the rear window. I want to know why it looks like that. Maybe Ken can tell us. Why does the rear window look like that?
So this car was the design was a collaboration between Philip Wright and a man whose last name was Hughes. I can't think of his first name. Mr. Hughes came from Rolls-Royce, where he had done quite a bit of design, and he was hired by Studebaker and Pierce Arrow to work on this car. The rear window was designed that way because they didn't want to have the glare of cars overtaking.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea was that if they did this little narrow window, you wouldn't see the glare. Phil Wright liked that idea, and apparently Mr. Hughes did not. They had a big argument about it, but Wright was right, and he did it. So that could be apocryphal, but that's what I've heard.
You can't see out the window. You can't see the glare, right?
Well, the other idea might have been that with a 12-cylinder, 175 horsepower engine, maybe you would be overtaken.
Right. Indeed. It's a good one, Ken. Thank you.
Anyone else? Question? Okay, if not, I mean, feel free. You can come down here, take a look at the car, take some pictures. Would like to thank Stephen, for coming here and talking about the collection. So
Thank you.
thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. And please make sure you look at the cars with the hoods up.
Yep.